and welcome. I'm joined by Rajiv Bajaj, Managing Director of Bajaj Auto, and we are speaking on the subject of innovation in general and specifically in the context of your company and two-wheelers. So tell us, what does innovation mean to you today?
You know, Govind, I would like to draw a distinction between three words. One is improvement. You know, improvement is when you make reasonably incremental change in things, and you do that all the time, in cost, in quality, in inventory, in logistics, so on and so forth. I would suggest that the other extreme, you have something called invention. And I think sometimes we confuse innovation for invention. To me, invention is something that happens once in a while, is very disruptive, usually demands a different set of skills, especially at the back end of the business. I mean, for example, I would illustrate by saying that electric cars have been in the making for the last 100 years. To me, that's not a subject of invention. Driverless cars have come out of nowhere in 5 years. That to me is a process of invention. I think between these two extremes lies a very fertile ground called innovation, where it has to be more than incremental, but one doesn't have to worry about it being earth-shaking every time. I like very much the definition of Thomas Edison, that your solution has to be novel only in the context of the problem that you're solving. So if we think about innovation in those terms, it suggests that we can take existing building blocks and create new solutions and occupy a new place in the marketplace. That to me is the meaning of innovation, at least in the context of the auto industry.
So when you go from, let's say, 50 kilometers per liter to 65 kilometers per liter, is that innovation or?
It's good that you're putting numbers on it, because in my experience, if the improvement is only about 10% or so, then it's really more in the Me Too area. Consumers do not even feel it. If it is 10 to 20%, it is seen as an improvement. And anything more than 20% is truly seen as something different and distinct and therefore innovative. So 50 to 65 is 33%, you know, or 30%. So that would be innovative in my view. And in this industry, to go from 50 kilometers a liter to 65, it would take quite something because the technology is quite mature.
Right. So if I were to ask you about Bajaj Auto, the three things that you're working on where you're setting these sort of stretch targets for innovation, what would they be?
I would say that at the highest level, it has to be at the level of the business strategy itself. So, rightly or wrongly, we are known for having narrowed our focus to just motorcycles, because we have broadened our markets to become a global player. Now, in this context, we have made some very specific choices. A, we decide that in terms of the mainstream battle, we will fight only one big battle at a time, i.e. motorcycles. So we don't also try to make scooters or other such products. But then leveraging the same back-end skills and cost structure, we are looking to build three specific niches around that. Since you said three issues. So one is our intra-city business, which is basically three-wheelers, but going on from there into the category called quadricycles. The other niche we have started building is that of superbikes. It started with our acquisition of KTM in 2007, progressively since then, and hopefully we can take it further in the future. And the third one that we have only just started conceiving is what we call urbanites, which means that what kind of mobility solutions does or do the cities of our world need in the future? Of course, everybody knows they have to be chic and they have to be clean and all that. But physically, what does it look like? So building three such niches of a central pool of cost and skills. I would say this is an example of an innovative strategy.
Right. The cities of the future approach seems to be a little newer. Am I right in saying so?
It's, well, it's not new to the auto industry. I think every manufacturer across the world is working on this. It is a new endeavor on our part.
Yeah, I meant Bajaj Auto.
Yes, for us it is more recent. We've been working on it for the last few years. And let's see, hopefully we have something in a couple of years from now.
Right. So are you saying that a lot of what you think today is really about saying what are the fundamental issues of mobility, what are the fundamental issues of the way consumers will actually move from place A to place B, and that could be fundamentally changing?
I would say that's definitely half the argument, because there is no point trying to conjure up solutions that do not solve a problem for the consumer. But that's only half the problem, because in my experience, the bigger problem in the business is not customers, but competition. You know, it's not about giving customers what they want. It's also about giving customers what they want that your competitor cannot. That's the whole idea of differentiation, and that's the whole purpose of innovation. So we have to always ask ourselves that by leveraging who we are, how are we offering a different solution? The marketing guru Al Ries said something very interesting. He said the job of the CEO is to find the future in the current activities. If you disengage from your center, you will be lost. But how can you take your center forward? I think this is the challenge.
Right. So to what extent do Indian consumers want more than maybe the coolest looking bike at the lowest cost with the highest mileage?
Well, everybody wants all of that. That's never going to happen. There's two basic approaches in marketing. The intuitive approach is called marketing of convergence. Everything in one thing. The best example of that is the Swiss penknife. It has 20 tools on it. However, in real life is contraintuitive because everybody buys the penknife but nobody uses it. Ultimately, you reach for the scissor or the knife, etc. So marketing as opposed to sales is about specialization and doing one thing and making it more and more customized to the purpose it is going to serve. I think that's how you create great brands.
Right. So something went wrong on the innovation endeavor when it came to the quadricycle. Tell us about that.
See, Bajaj is the world's largest three-wheeler maker and we export more three-wheelers than we even sell in this market. So we asked ourselves one day, what would be the best three-wheeler for the future? Because sometimes unfairly people tell us that this vehicle doesn't belong to this century. So we said to ourselves that the best three-wheeler would probably be a vehicle that had actually 4 wheels, 4 doors, a steering, a hard roof, a seat belt. The kind of stuff that car guys take for granted, but the auto guy doesn't have. So we built a vehicle which is in general auto parlance called a quadricycle as opposed to a tricycle as a much safer, greener, cleaner alternative to the three-wheeler. And naively we assumed that the world would welcome it. Well, the world has welcomed it. We are exporting to so many countries. But in India, I am still waiting approval. So the lesson here for innovation is that in India, if your innovation depends on government approval or the judicial process, then it is not going to be a case of made in India. It will be a case of going mad in India. Because I am waiting for 5 years for approval for what to me seems to be the obvious.
But did you perhaps not anticipate the opposition that would come in from competitors?
As I said, it is all competition motivated. But I would think that people in government can see that it is as clear as daylight that a 4-wheeled vehicle with doors and seat belts is better than a 3-wheeled vehicle. If they can't see that, God help us.
Right. So what's your next step on that? I mean, I know you're waiting, but what else are you?
Oh, there's nothing I can do because I don't run the company and the country or the government. I can only export more and more and keep making the point that the world is moving from 3 wheels to 4 wheels. Do you want to keep India back on 3 wheels?
Right. So let me ask you a slightly different question. I mean, we've seen the election of Donald Trump. We've seen Brexit. The world is changing. I mean, it's moving on its axis a little bit. How does that, if at all, affect companies like yours and the way you look at the future of the company and mobility in general?
I would like to answer this in somewhat broad terms. I think the phenomena that we are seeing, including the rise of the Aam Aadmi Party, this is all about, I think, as people are generally saying, the have-nots speaking up, as opposed to always being submissive to the haves. And therefore, people talk about inclusiveness for sustainability. I would suggest another word for inclusiveness is completeness. We have to look at things in a more holistic way, in a more complete way. And I think I can draw an analogy between that concept and our business, because we are not a business that is a single brand business. I don't go out there to sell Bajaj motorcycles. I sell a Boxer for those who want to use a motorcycle as a taxi in Nigeria. The other end of the spectrum, I sell a KTM for those who want to race somewhere in the US, Europe or Japan.
Indonesia, where you just
and we just launched in Indonesia. And between the Boxer at one end, which we sell for $350, believe it or not, and the KTM for 10 times as much, we have so many other brands. So we have built a nice portfolio of horses for courses that allows us to address each segment individually, whereas together it is complete. So I think I'm trying to say that unlike any other manufacturer, Bajaj is the only motorcycle maker in the world that is truly complete. that can serve all markets and all segments from Africa to America.
So, to some extent, you've been the beneficiary of globalization. I mean,
I think it is a choice you
wrong,
make.
I mean,
I think it's a choice you make. Every company can make that choice. But I think the problem is this, that people don't always realize that when you address more markets, you have to narrow your product focus. You can't play 10 sports and be a world champion in all 10 sports as a person. If you want to be Mahendra Singh Dhoni, you have to narrow your focus to only one sport. Within that, sometimes to only one type of cricket. Whereas many companies out of India, if I may say so, believe that just because they address 20 segments in India, they can go global in 20 segments. I don't know of any company which has done this in recent times. See, people give you the example of GE or someone else who's done it 50 years ago. But timing is the essence of strategy. You cannot apply the same principle today that was valid 50 years ago. So globalization is an option that's available to everyone, provided you are willing to go really narrow and deep into one area.
Right. So last question. So what are the 3 things that are keeping you focused and busy, of course, in the next year or so?
Well, the first is to build Bajaj into the most complete motorcycle maker possible.
Which you talked about.
I don't use the word best because I think complete is a better word. And then frankly, outside of that, I tell people motorcycles is only my hobby. My real passion is the science of homeopathy and the practice of yoga. So I spend more time doing that actually.
You talked about the alignments. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, Guruji Iyengar taught me. He said in one word, yoga is alignment. Yeah. In one word, management is alignment. If you can get everybody aligned to one purpose in the marketplace, that's the job of the CEO.